Rock and roll.
The airing of this program by this station is not an endorsement or recommendation by the station of the products or services discussed in the program. The station does not guarantee the results of any investments made by a listener to this program.
The Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush is sponsored by the Word on Wealth Radio Network.
This is the Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Gary is a San Diego financial solutions attorney, protecting people like you. The Word on Wealth team of financial experts is here to answer your questions and help preserve your family's financial future. Now, here's Gary.
You heard it right here on the Word on Wealth. We are here to protect your family's financial future. That's true. Monday through Friday, we're here every day. KCBQ, KPRZ. Good to have you along, and we're glad to have you here. We want you to be part of the show. Today's a special show because it is on Monday that we have the Richard Mathurin. Rich is an attorney, been an attorney for a long time here in California, and he is a member of the tax team in the GQ Law firm that sponsors this show. So Rich and I both work for GQ Law, and that's how they sponsor the show. And that's why we always talk about legal stuff. If you have questions, I'd love to hear your questions regarding tax problem solving, probate, wills, trust administration, asset distribution, getting your money, giving your money away. 855-500. That's my number, 855-500-TRUST for my offline. But if you want to talk to me on the air, the number is 888-344-1170. All right. Happy Monday. Hope you guys had a great weekend. And it's just always so good to be here with you guys. Here's a couple things. I have a free book that I would love all of you to get if you don't have it already. It comes to you in the form of a PDF, which is a portable document format, and it gets sent to your email. The way you get it is you go to my law website, which is GQ Law. So GQ, like Gary Quackenbush, gqlaw.com. And on the right-hand side, there are a couple of things that look like book covers. There's a white-looking one that says Living Trust Basics. You can click on that cover. It asks for your name and your email address, and it will be sent to your home or your email, wherever you get your email, to your pocket, I suppose. And that information is a booklet that I created. It's about 20 pages long. It is 8.5 by 11, just regular paper printout if you want to print it out that way, or just keep reading it as a PDF. It is a outline format explanation of living trust basics. So it's wills, trust, power of attorneys, comparison between them. And it was a document that I created over the past gajillion years when I've been doing this, as I gave lectures all over the state of California and updated and modified. And that's the final product. So you can get that by going to gqlaw.com and clicking on the book cover. This is Living Trust Basics. Share it with your friends. If your parents do not have a trust, they need one. Okay, that's something that we should be thinking about as kids. If you're my age and your parents don't have a trust, they need a trust. They absolutely do. Even if they have no property at all, they at least need a will to designate what happens, because if they became incapacitated, a will doesn't do you any good. If they have no property, no money, no nothing, then you need to get a power of attorney to be able to help them out. Without a power of attorney, you end up in probate court to get a conservatorship over your parents. That's a horrible thing to have to do. It's time consuming. It is expensive, and it is a royal pain in the neck. We do them. We are good at them, but it's expensive. And it's a pain in the neck for you guys to get a conservatorship over your parents. Better is to talk to your parents and tell them that they might need some help from you as they get older. And to do that, you would need some type of a power of attorney or a limited power of attorney that would restrict what you could possibly do and make it so that you could only help them. That's all possible, but you can't get it without calling me, 855-500-TRUST. 855-500-TRUST. If you have a trust or an estate plan, let me take a look at it. Let me make sure it's right. Because how are you going to know it's right when you're dead? You're not. You're just going to hope. So you want to make sure that if you've gone through the trouble of putting together an estate plan because you care about your relatives and your family enough to try not to make a mess when you die, that was a good thing. Well, you got to make sure that it's done right, that it isn't like a do-it-yourself thing, that, there's questionable whether the paperwork actually works. You want to have it done or reviewed by somebody that knows what they're doing, that will be here for a long time. And I'm willing to do that for you. 855-500-TRUST is the number to call, or you can go on my website and request a consultation there as well. Okay. We always talk about the topics that we don't want to talk about, right? We don't want to talk about what if my spouse dies? Well, let's do it. Let's talk about it. We deal with it quite a bit. And I will tell you from firsthand experience, that is a question that a lot of people ask, because a lot of people have their spouse die. In fact, you know what? 100% of us are going to die. We're not getting out of this world alive. That's just the way it is. And getting old is not for the faint of heart. Having a spouse die is not for the faint of heart. Now, I have not had a spouse die. I didn't mean firsthand by that, but I mean, I have a lot of clients that are working through that. So I want to give you some advice. So if this is going to be a spouse dies, or it's going to be that you have maybe one of your parents passes away or something, how do you deal with like the little stuff, not the legal stuff, but the number one thing? Listen up, guys. Do not turn off their cell phone. Remember, we're in the era where everybody tries to rip you off from electronically. So that means there's probably a lot of things that require two-factor authentication, right? Two-step, where you log in and it says, we don't recognize you. It's been a little while, and they want to send a confirmation to the cell phone. I've seen that mistake so many times, where you're trying to conserve money. You're thinking, we don't need the cell phone anymore. He's passed away, so we can get rid of the cell phone. That's, $75 a month or whatever. And then first thing that happens is you now try to log in. You try to, you have his accounts, and you want to go in and log in to pay a utility bill or ask a question or anything, make a payment, any of that kind of stuff. You're going to get the notice that says, we don't recognize this computer, or, gee, it's been a long time since we talked to you. We want to send you a verification code. We've sent it to cell phone number ****8600. That's all you're going to get. And if that's his or her cell phone, that's where the code went, and there's no way to change it. Okay. I mean, you can change it, but not online. You're going to have to go in to the office with your letters or your authority or your trust, but something to show that you have the authority to get into your mom's and dad's money. And if they are incapacitated and you don't have a power of attorney, you're not going to be able to touch it. Nope. That's when you got to have a power of attorney. So when your spouse passes away, do not turn off the cell phone. Don't try to change the number. Don't try to do something with the plan. I know it'll cost money, but leave it. Deal with the cell phone, keep it charged, make sure you look who's texting, and maybe phone calls. Okay. I recommend that you are not in a big hurry to change the names on all of the accounts. I would say wait at least 40 days before you do something like that. But don't be in a big hurry to go in and say, my husband passed away and I don't want him on my bank account anymore. I understand that. The problem you're going to have is you could run into a situation where you have an old account that was set up like jillion years ago. And when it was set up, that's when they used just husband's social security number for the account. And now you go in and say, oh, my husband passed away. I want to take his name off the account. I've actually seen what they say, oh, we're sorry. Your name's not on this account. And then they say, oh, wait a minute. Another situation, your name is on the account, but your social security is not, so we can't identify you positively. Literally, these are actual scenarios. Okay, don't let that happen to you. Do not be in a big hurry to change accounts. Let's come up with a plan, how fast to change accounts, when to do it, kind of get you set up and ready for the problems that you will certainly face. But get a professional. I'm happy to do it. 855-500-TRUST. Just give me a call, 855-500-TRUST. The other thing is just kind of interesting is if I were you, all right, I'll be
You
back in a
don't
minute.
need to know everything. You just need to know where to find answers you can trust when you need them. Welcome to the Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush. We're here to help you build, protect, and transfer everything you've worked hard for with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary and the team at gqlaw.com. 855-500-TRUST.
You're saving and investing for the future, and that's good. Have you ever stopped to think, where does my money actually go? This is faith-based investing with Anthony Wright.
Most Christian families don't understand this one thing. The money that you're saving for retirement helps fund the abortion industry as well as other liberal anti-family causes. It's the sad, dirty little secret of American investing world. And here's the good news, though. You probably also didn't know that just a few minutes of your time and we'll screen and clean your investments for you. There's no cost, no obligation.
Everything good, GQ?
Own investment.
Yes, sir.
And the choice is yours.
I never know when to talk because I know you're still do the YouTube. So Rich there on Mike.
That when people have a tax problem, it tends to really stress them out. And one of the things we've been able to do is figure out how to resolve tax problems. One thing we might be doing is setting up a payment plan or getting a collection delay, maybe getting a determination that the person shouldn't have to pay the taxes at all. We do offers and compromise. We do audit reconsiderations. And one of the things that's a really powerful tool that some people don't recognize is sometimes bankruptcy can be used to actually eliminate taxes when there's certain conditions of the code that are met. So we can do all kinds of things. After we analyze your situation, we can figure out what's available, discuss your options, and figure out which ones to implement, what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take. And we can get people out from under all kinds of tax problems so they can sleep again. That's our goal.
Request your free initial consultation. gqlaw.com. 855-500-TRUST. gqlaw.com.
No.
You're not alone. Ask for the legal help you need. Call Gary and the team at GQ Law, 855-500-TRUST, or go online and download Gary's free ebooks and videos. Read Gary's blogs. Call or click to request your free consultation or to talk with a member of the GQ team. That's gqlaw.com, 855-500-TRUST.
Trust. That's right. That's the number. And if you want to be on this show, the number is 888-344-1170. I would love to hear from you if you have any questions. We are talking about a topic that you probably wouldn't want to call up and say, hey, Gary, so yeah, my husband died and I need to know what to do. Probably not something you would call into a show if you felt like it. I think that would be great. It happens to everyone. That doesn't make it easier. Doesn't make it easier. I remember when my mom passed away, I had a friend that came up and told me that, it was like, oh, I had friends going, oh no, sorry to hear about your mom. Sorry to hear about your mom. And I said, that's kind. I really appreciate it. And then a friend had come up and went, he goes, hey, your mom, yeah, it happens. It's like, I know it happens. And it actually did happen. And it happens to everybody. It really sent me. I don't know. I didn't go into this rage. It just like kicking me in the stomach. Well, that's not what you're supposed to say. quite frankly, I don't know what you're supposed to say. I would love for somebody to call and say, Garrett, this is what you're supposed to say. If somebody says, yeah, my spouse passed away, what do you do? How do you respond? And all I know is you say, I'm sorry. And don't comment and say, oh, so did mine. Gee, yeah, it really stinks. I don't know. How do you deal with this stuff? That's what our Friday show is for. Our Finding Joy Fridays. That's what we have on our Friday show. We talk about wealth without a dollar sign, finding joy, finding friendship, finding family, things, taking care of things. It's our mental health Friday. That's every Friday here on the Word on Wealth. Finding Joy Friday. All right. So right before I had to stop, I was going to tell you one thing I would recommend not doing, and that is telling everybody that your spouse has passed away. It's not always a problem, but here's what happens. Okay, you go into the bank and you basically go in and let's say there's a joint account, it's a husband and wife account. You go into the bank and you say, I want to close the account, or I want to access the account, or I want to take money out of the account, or whatever. Okay. Because eventually I want all the money to be in the name of the surviving spouse. So let's say husband died, now it's wife. Wife goes to bank and she wants to put everything in her name. So she goes in and says, yeah, I want to open an account in my name. And the teller says, okay, go talk to new accounts. And then the new accounts person says, oh, okay. So why do you need this account? Oh, my husband died. Oh, I'm so sorry. When did that happen? It happened about 2 weeks ago. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Especially sorry because I just I just froze your accounts. I put a death hold on everything, which is 40 days from the date of death. It's like, really? There's no need to have that discussion. There's no need to have that disclosure. They're trying to be nice. I don't know if they're trying to pick numbers. I'd love somebody from a bank to call me right now and explain to me why that question always happens and why do they put those death holds, because it drives me crazy. They shouldn't happen. I don't know what the reason is. It's a joint account. It all belongs to the surviving spouse, but you don't go in there with a death certificate and say, here's my husband's death certificate, move all the money to my account. They won't. Part of it is you have to wait at least 40 days. So I say, don't talk about it. It's not a lie. You don't have to go in there and make an announcement. You just go in and do your thing. I went in with my stepmom when my dad passed away. We went into the bank, and I tell people this all the time, right? So I go into the bank with my stepmom, who's this darling woman. I love her so much, and she's just been so kind to me, and she's a really good friend. Okay. So we went into the bank and we were closing some of my dad's accounts because we didn't need him anymore. And the first thing, it was really the weirdest thing I couldn't believe was actually happening, is the teller says, because we said, okay, we'd like to know the balances in the accounts, and my stepmom's there with me, right? She's the one that's doing all this. It's her name's on the account, and she writes checks and all that kind of stuff. I want to know the balance in the account because I'd like to close that account. And she says, oh, well, may I ask why? Of course, the nice reaction is, oh yeah, my husband passed away, and so I'm just kind of cleaning things up. But no, you don't want to do that, because what's going to be their reaction? I don't know. What should be their reaction? There should be the reaction should be, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, let me help you here. But it's usually, oh, well, now I don't know what to do. I'm going to go ahead and just put a death hold on the account. And some banks actually call it that. So I had talked to my stepmom before that, and I said, just don't say anything about dad passing. And so she didn't. They said, so why are you closing the account? She goes, oh, we're just establishing a different bank relationship. Done, and no further comment. And so they gave us the balances. They had to mix 3 accounts into one and write a check, and then this, and do a transfer or whatever. And they wrote us a check, and then she said, now, and go ahead and close those accounts. And then they did. But an opposite problem happened, or a different situation. And this is with my father-in-law. It's a very different situation. They went into the bank, and they were, it was my mother-in-law was trying to get into the bank account because her husband had passed away, and she's trying to get into the money. And the bank was all really super nice, and so sorry to hear about your husband. And they had already known for some reason, I guess because they'd been going to the bank for a long time. And she said, is there going to be any problem? He said, no, there won't be any problem. We understand, we're taking your husband off the account and it's going to just be in your name. You're going to have total control, but no problem, no problem, no problem. Okay. Then she writes a check and the check bounces. What the heck? Call the credit union. Oh, sorry, there's a hold on the account. You told me there wouldn't be a hold on the account. Well, I'm sorry, there is. Why is there? I don't know. So we ended up having to go into the bank and figure out what the heck was going on. And they said, oh, well, the account was set up. Usually it's set up where the husband and wife's social security numbers are on the account. So husband, here's his social, wife, here's his social. But this account was set up so many years ago that we didn't require both social security numbers. So it was both names were under the husband's social security number. Really? Husband with his social security number, wife with his social security number, husband's social security number. And because now the social security number had passed away, they couldn't use the account anymore. So they blocked it and she bounced checks. Really? So I say, just relax. Don't worry about it. People aren't really trying to be idiots. They're not trying to be unhelpful. They're trying to be helpful, but just don't talk so much. That's all there is to it. Don't close the account right away. Go in there and find out the balance and write a check for the amount. Go online, find the balance, write a check for that amount, watch it for a few months, get down to 35 cents or something, and then close the account. But don't do it while there's something at stake. That's my advice. Okay. The next thing I would love, this is advice from Gary. The next thing is, and this is for all of you. And I know the temptation. The banks are pushing really, really hard to be paperless. Like every time I go on my investment account to check it, every time I go into my bank account, it's like, check here to confirm that you want to go paperless. That I never said I wanted to go paperless, but it wants me to check to quote confirm that I made some choice that I didn't make. It's just, it annoys me to no end. So as I'm getting older, and if I'm 85 years old and I'm having trouble reading things anyways, and I'm having a little trouble remembering things, if every time I go onto this account, it says, check here to confirm your choice that you want paperless. It's like, wait a minute. That wasn't my choice. I'd never wanted paperless. So they're not lying. They're just not being completely upfront. And I don't like that because they really want you to go paperless. What is the problem with that? I will tell you the problem with that. If you're totally paperless and you die, how do your kids ever know what bank accounts you have? Okay. Because here's the thing. If I wanted to know after my dad passed away, if I want to know every single bank account he ever had, I just have to watch his mail. And at the beginning of the year, every bank account is going to send a statement, the end of year statement, even, because some of the things he said paperless, but he always said end of year account paper. Now, some banks will say, well, if you want paper statements, we're going to charge you $3 a month. Go to a different bank. Okay. You have to get some paper if it's a year-end statement or whatever, because here's what happens is if I'm now watching, the address now that I get my dad's mail, anything to do with this trust comes to me. And so I can watch his mail. So that was the first thing I did, is made sure that mail comes to me, not to his house, because the house, it may be sold. He may be in an apartment. He may have moved or whatever, but now you want the mail to come to you. So you do what it takes to get the mail to come to you. And you watch the mail, because usually around the beginning of the year, for the first couple months, you're going to be getting statements from the banks and the investments. And it was really cool. And I see this with my clients a lot, is to see now all the stuff that's coming in. You're listening to The Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush. I'm talking about things to do when your spouse dies, things to do and things not to do. That's why I'm talking about right now. If you have any questions and you want to run it by me, or it's something you want legal help with, I'm happy to share my knowledge and wisdom and my time so that you can get it done right. So we get hired to do this kind of stuff all the time. 855-500-TRUST, 855-500-TRUST. Is there anything that needs to be done when a spouse passes away? And the answer is yes. Number one is you got to talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about. And number two, there are things that need to happen. There's some documentation that needs to be filed with the county recorder's office to show that there's only one person on title. Eventually, we want to get the bank accounts all under one person's name, because you have to stop using the deceased person's social security number. And anything that's attached to that social security number, you've got to be really careful. So my suggestion is you get a game plan. Don't just wing it, get a game plan. Now, some people have had great experiences doing it on their own and just kind of being really honest and going to the bank and saying, yeah, my husband passed away and da. And that works out sometimes
2 minutes.
depending on the relationship you have with the bank and depending on where your money is. But I think you got to have a plan. You got to be kind of versed on the law and realize there's a 40-day waiting period for the small estate affidavit. And sometimes that comes into play. If everything is in a trust, it's much better. If you have a power of attorney, even a limited power of attorney, that is much better. Those are awesome, especially when you're dealing with disability or incapacity. So the other thing, this is the last one, and this I think is just super important, is share your passwords with your spouse. How many of us do not? I've got my hand raised. A lot of us don't share our passwords because our spouses say, you know what, that's your business. Just, you have a lot of, I have like a couple hundred passwords. It's insane. Got to share them with your spouse. You're listening to the Word on Wealth. So good to have you along here. If you want to contact me directly, it's 855-500-TRUST. And we are here all week. 855-500-TRUST. I'm sorry, we are here not only all week, we are here every day except Mondays. Yeah, Monday through Friday at the office, 855-500-TRUST. If you want to be on this show, I'd love to have you call up and offer some suggestions. Have you had suggestions on how things should work out, and help me advise our listening audience, our listening public, so that people can be more educated on this stuff and make it so that when somebody passes away, with all the drama and the stuff we have to deal with, we're just trying to smooth that out. 855-500-TRUST. Happy to help you out with that. Coming up next, we got Rich Mathurin from GQ Law. He's going to talk about some tax problem solving and some tax situations I'm going to talk to Rich about. We're going to talk about money management, debt management, those type of things with Rich Mathurin coming up right now on the Word on Wealth.
You've got questions. We've got answers. This is the Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Gary's here to give you peace of mind with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary to build, protect, and transfer your wealth. 855-500-TRUST. GQlaw.com. .com.
Hey, welcome to the Word on Wealth. I told you it was going to be on Mondays. We have Rich Mathurin from GQ Law, and he's here with us. Rich, how you doing today?
Great, Gary. Good to be here.
You know, I always appreciate you coming in, and not only because then I don't have to do the show for an hour by myself. I kind of pull you away. I go into Rich, I say, Rich, can you help me out in the show today? And you always do a good job. So I appreciate that.
I love to hear my own voice.
You know, it's one of those things. Does your voice sound weird to you when you hear it on like the when you watch these things on YouTube?
Yeah, a little bit. It's soft, but I've been told I have a pretty good voice for this. A couple of people have called because of my voice. So.
That's right. I want to talk to that guy with a nice voice. You know, that's so funny. That's so true. So Rich is he's our tax attorney, does a lot of stuff here at GQ Law. He's been an attorney for a long time. And that's the thing with Rich and I, neither of us are new at any of this stuff. We're both seasons. I think between the two of us, what do we have, like 55 years of practice or something like that? I don't know. Even practicing, what, 20?
Yeah, something like that.
I know. Anyway, a lot of experience. So we're always happy to share that with you guys. If you have questions for us, it's 888-344-1170. So in dealing with, one of the things that Rich does really well is he's like, has this real expertise in dealing with money situations. So like managing debts, and we get into different types of debt. So I wanted to ask Rich if he would comment, Rich, on debt management. So you have kind of the regular old, I don't know, we call them regular. And I guess if you have the debts, it's not regular. It's like annoying, but you have like credit cards, back bills, you know, maybe a judgment or something against you, but you owe money and you can't pay it. That's one thing. So like the regular debts that people run into problems with. And I want to have you talk about that and then compare that to tax debts. I mean, as far as like options or managing those things, how different are those two scenarios, like regular debt management versus tax debt management?
Well, I think regular debt management, creditors will probably be a lot more aggressive in terms of they will call you and, you know, badger you that way. But then once they decide that you're not going to pay through those type of methods, they probably would sue you in civil court and try to get a judgment against you for the amount of the debt plus any of their costs. But then beyond that, they have to enforce that. If they get what they call a default judgment, then they would have to enforce that in the court. And then they might be able, after that, they might be able to get a lien on your assets and or get a garnishment of your wages or your bank account. But it is a long process, probably a year or two for them to ultimately collect.
That long. So as far as like you default on your credit card, they start yelling at you and, okay, it's been 90 days. We're going to ding your credit. From that point, it's still going to take a very long time for them to get into your bank account.
Yeah, they have to file suit. They have to, you know, serve you with the papers. They have to get a trial, and if you don't show up to the trial, then they get it. I'm not a litigator, so sort of maybe fast pacing what these actually, but then they would get default judgment. Then they have to enforce the default judgment. Then they have to be able to actually, you know, get money out of it, whether it's like we talked about garnishment, levy, maybe a lien on your assets. So it's a long process. Whereas I think we've talked about the IRS, that probably
the IRS is way different than that.
Much more powerful in terms of they do not need to go to court to get a lien against you. They can file, I believe, if you have a balance of 10,000 or more with them, it's automatic. They file liens. And then
so like a creditor, I have a credit card and I owe $5 and $10 and $15 or $20,000 or whatever. I have multiple credit cards. It's just kind of out of control. And I owe all this money. I know how much I owe, you know, but then if the creditor is going to sue me, they're going to have to prove how much I owe, and they're going to have these statements and all that kind of thing. But with the IRS, like, what if I never filed a tax return? It's like I'm ignoring this thing. I don't want to file my tax returns. And that yet you hear sometimes that the IRS is now coming after people. You know, what are they doing? I mean, if it were my credit card, I know the numbers because I incurred it. I charged it. But like with taxes, if I never file my taxes, how can they collect money from me if I've never filed?
Well, they usually would get some type of indication that you had some income in the particular year, a W-2, a 1099. And then they would do create what's called a substitute for return, where they would take that amount of money that you earned based on their records, give you the standard deduction that you were allowed, the lowest standard deduction, and then tax you at the highest rate available, usually single rate, and not give you any of your own deductions that you might have. And those returns, those taxes usually are, I would want to say, at least 20, 25, can be even, 50, 100% more than you would actually owe if you had done your own tax return, had engaged a tax preparer. So, solutions to that are to engage your own tax preparer and fix the SFR, substitute for return, and hopefully get your balance lowered. But those are very, very difficult to deal with. They are not dischargeable in a bankruptcy going forward. And again, the tax rate is often a lot higher. The tax assessment is often a lot higher than if you did it yourself.
Interesting. So it's like, I know that with regular credit card debts, I have incurred the debt. I did the charges, I did whatever, or if I didn't pay my car and it got repossessed, there's a balance due. Those seem pretty clear. And with the IRS, I don't have to tell them by filing a return how much I owe. They're going to figure it out for me, and then they're going to do the collections. But now you're saying with the collections, if it's a regular, we call them civilian debt, where they have to, they file a lawsuit, you got a chance to respond. If you don't respond, they enter this thing called default, which cuts off your response, ability to respond. And then they have to go to a hearing, they have to go to this, and basically do all these provings. With the IRS, though, how different is it? They don't have to go to a judge and prove up anything, right? What is the process? I mean, why does the IRS get to do that? I mean, what is their process for? They calculated my tax return. They send me a bill. They say, Gary, you owe us, $10,000 in taxes. What goes on from there? They can actually come after me.
Well, Congress gives them the power, they do not have to go through the normal judicial process. They get an audit, once they assess you and they notice you about the assessment and you don't pay it, then they don't have to go through those, file a lawsuit and try to collect. They ought to get those rights automatically under the law. So it's pretty much different than, like we talked about, a normal creditor would have to sue and go through a 1 year, 2 year process. Whereas with IRS, it can be, as quickly as 3 months type of thing.
Yeah, interesting, because so it's by statute, because the law says once there's a tax assessment, now they can just go through this and there's due process. I think it's kind of funny, right? Because we learn about due process in law school, and it's always this very constitutional due process. You have to be served properly in your habeas corpus and whatever. But then with the IRS, there's due process. I can't do air quotes because it really is due process. But their due process is, here's how much you owe. Make sure you pay, you got to pay it. It's 30 days from now. And then it's going to be, here's your final reminder. And then here's your final notice. We're going to levy you. So it's like the due process for them is that they send these notices out periodically. That's the due process. It's not a judicial process. It's not a court. There's no jury. There's no, trial. But along the way though, Rich, let's say then somebody didn't file their tax returns, and maybe it's, not that you've ever seen this before, where somebody owes like a lot of money because they haven't filed in a very, very long time. But is there a way to kind of save that situation? I mean, if the IRS is coming in and kind of beating them up for their money and they realize they haven't filed, how do you save that? It just seems like, is there some program or is there some magic wand, or how do we save that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, there's one of two options. You can appeal the assessment if you don't feel like you owe it. Or like we talked about earlier, might be the easier thing is to hire your own tax preparer and have that person prepare those missing returns and see what you owe after that.
Okay.
And let's say that the IRS said you owed 100,000, and after your tax preparer does the missing returns and they do a new assessment and it's like 20,000, then there are several programs that we can get you into to solve that tax balance. But it's a lot easier to solve a $20,000 tax balance than it is $100,000 or more tax balance.
So, and that's stuff, and you're listening to The Word on Wealth. This is Gary Quackenbush and attorney Rich Mathurin from GQ Law talking about resolving people's tax situations. So Rich, then if you haven't filed, get them filed, figure out the balances. And the other thing, I guess, along that same lines is sometimes people just don't file. And then recently with the IRS kind of getting I don't know, sloppier or just slower because they don't have enough people to kind of enforce things. It seems like people really fall behind in filings. And what is your suggestion? Let's say somebody has not filed the returns in 3 or 4 years, and they're worried about, oh my gosh, if I file, I don't think I've had enough withholding. I've been self-employed. I think I'm going to owe money. I don't know what to do.
1 minute.
I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to start. Let's talk about a solution. In fact, let's do it after we come back from the break. I'm going to ask Rich when we get back is, what do you do if you haven't filed tax returns in 3 or 4 years? Yes, it does happen, 3 or 4 or 5 years, and you're worried now you're going to owe. What should you do? What are your options? I think we're going to talk to Rich Mathurin about that. You're listening to The Word on Wealth. This is Gary Quackenbush and Rich Mathurin. If you need help from us, call Rich 855-500-TRUST. 855-500-TRUST. You can trust he's going to do a good job for you. And you can talk about your tax problem solving issue with him. If you have anything to do with, estates, estate planning, money you're getting from inheritance, let's talk about that. 855-500-TRUST. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk to Rich about what should you do if you are way behind. Is there hope? And we'll be talking about that right here on The Word on Wealth.
You don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to find answers you can trust when you need them. Welcome to The Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush. We are here to help you build, protect, and transfer everything you've worked hard for with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary and the team at gqlaw.com. 855-500-TRUST.
Gary, our listeners are asking about trust disputes and whether or not they'll actually get the inheritance they're expecting.
I think that's a scary thing for most people because they feel like, if I ask my successor trustee, hey, where's my inheritance? You kind of feel like, oh my gosh, I'm being like rude or whatever, inconsiderate. But I'm telling you, if time goes on, if it's been like 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, that's too long to have heard nothing. You're supposed to hear fairly soon, like within a couple of months after someone's passed, you should be hearing from that successor trustee. And if you're not, I think there's an issue we need to address. So it's not like we're going to go screaming in there, filing lawsuits. We kind of use gentle nudges like, hey, do you know what you're doing? Successor trustee, we kind of want to help you do your job, and we help beneficiaries kind of get things straightened out.
Call or click to request your free initial consultation. gqlaw.com. 855-500-TRUST. gqlaw.com.
You're not alone. Ask for the legal help you need. Call Gary and the team at GQ Law, 855-500-TRUST, or go online and download Gary's free ebooks and videos. Read Gary's blogs. Call or click to request your free consultation or to talk with a member of the GQ team. That's gqlaw.com, 855-500-TRUST.
All right, you're listening to The Word on Wealth. This is Gary Quackenbush and Rich Mathurin. Rich, good to have you along. Thank you for sticking around for the top of the hour.
Great to be here.
So we'll be here we have Rich to the top of the hour to get a hold of us on the show and ask a question. Now's your chance. What is the number? 888-344-1170. 888-344-1170. I asked Rich right before we took a little pause here is, what is his advice if you haven't filed tax returns in a while and you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, I think something's going to hit the fan. I don't know what to do. I've been running and hiding. What is your advice, Rich?
Like we've mentioned before, just get those returns filed. I think not filing and just burying your head in the sand is the worst thing you can do. There are programs, whether it's, a payment plan over a time, possibly an offer and compromise, possibly if we get to all the tax returns filed and there aren't any substitute for returns, possibly a bankruptcy in the future. Possibly if you've lost your job or you've gone through a medical situation, they have what's called a currently not collectible status, but they do need you to be in compliance. The IRS is big on getting you to fix your past problems, but they also want you in current compliance. That means filing at least the last 6 years of returns and getting into some type of a program to deal with your past tax balance. That's all they're looking for. They're not looking for, your firstborn child. They just want you to deal with the past and get in compliance in the future. They're not really asking for that much, I don't think.
It really, and I think that's really true. And I know Rich has been, since Rich has been with GQ Law, I've luckily not had to deal with the tax problems like I used to. And that's what Rich and I talk about quite a bit, is that the IRS, it's not like they're nicer or kinder or gentler or whatever that stuff that came out years ago. The bottom line is the IRS wants to get people back on track for whatever reason, nefarious or not. Either way, we live in the United States. There's taxes that are due. There's a tax code. There's all kinds of protests and whatever. But we believe that if you can get into compliance, meaning if there's a return required to be filed, file it. If you owe, deal with it. But if you start hiding or skipping returns, then it's going to be really difficult to resolve it, because the IRS, they're not going to work a deal with you and say, oh yeah, we'll just say, we'll say that you're currently not collectible. You don't have to pay these taxes. We're going to give you a 3-year break or an offer in compromise. We're going to take less money. They don't settle with people that aren't dealing with the situation. And once you get it resolved, or you're kind of current with the situation, then it makes it so that you can get a lot more done, right?
Yeah, definitely. I want to caution people about these things where that you hear ads that you can just, you enroll in some program and the IRS is going to forgive, 99% of your taxes or 90% of your taxes or whatever. That just isn't the case. They have certain programs, and I can explain them in detail, whether we talk about installment agreements, offer and compromise, currently not collectible, but there are requirements for each of these. It just isn't just, call the IRS and say, hey, I want to get my taxes forgiven. You have to go through these programs, and that's talking about dealing with the past and getting into current compliance. That's a big part of any of these programs.
It's not like, because I literally hear commercials, and I was talking about this like last night. I'm coming home from the airport and I'm in the shuttle and I'm hearing these commercials saying, all you have to do is enroll in this program. The IRS is promising to get rid of $80 billion, and you just have to enroll, and you have to enroll. And I kept thinking, like, that's not even true. There is no enrollment. There is no special program. The IRS came out with the Fresh Start Initiative. Folks, listen to this, all the new stuff. The IRS came out with the Fresh Start Initiative in 2014. It's been around since 2014. That's 9 years it's been implemented. And you're going to hear these commercials that make it sound like, oh, this is the newest thing ever. It's it's brand new. There's nothing brand new with the IRS. Since during the pandemic, they're just struggling to keep up. I mean, they're behind by, hundreds of thousands of mail pieces. There's no new program or there just isn't.
Let me clarify, the Fresh Start installment agreement is a full pay installment agreement. You pay it over time. They give you time, but you do pay interest. So it is, it's a full pay. You're not getting out from under when you hear about this Fresh Start program. And it's now just called an installment agreement.
Yeah.
One thing that I will emphasize, though, I have seen that since the pandemic, the IRS has been more forgiving, more thinking about partial pay installment agreements, not requiring the taxpayers to sell assets to pay their tax balance immediately. I've had a lot of good luck, and I'm not talking huge like the I have gotten on offering compromises, pennies on the dollar type of things. But I've saved clients several hundred thousands on partial pay installment agreements. But again, we need to deal with the past and get you in an installment agreement and get you currently in compliance with filing your, at least your past 6 years of returns, including the current year of 22. So
now on those, so if you're going to get caught up with the past year's tax returns, is it, I mean, how hard is it to get, like if somebody hasn't filed returns in 6 years, is what I'm trying to ask, and they don't have very good records, is that even possible to come up with tax returns?
I can't speak for other tax preparers. Our tax preparer, Craig Fortin, a very knowledgeable gentleman and good to work with. He's very good about working with clients using bank statements and trying to get as much information. Sometimes you'd have to speak with Craig on this, on how he does it, but he might be able to use your industry that you're in to create a tax return for you. But your employee, you should be able to get the W-2 or the 1099 from the person you worked for during that year. So that would be a big start type of thing. If you had your own business, again, you'd have to go back and get your bank statements. Maybe you have to count the money under your mattress or something. But I think it's dealable. The IRS just wants to see something on paper that you're showing that you're trying to, that I'm obviously not telling you to file a fraudulent tax return, but you can create something that is representative of what happened during that tax year.
And it seems like if the problem is that when you file, you owe money and you can't pay it, how precise you have to have your returns. I mean, if you, I always look at it as, you prepare a return and you show it, you owe $5,000 because you're self-employed. Well, if you'd worked another 12 or 15 hours grinding out records, you could reduce that liability. Instead of 5,000, maybe you could get it to where you only owe 4,500. Well, if you're going to be working a payment plan on the 5,000, why would you kill yourself trying to find these last little tiny records? The other thing that I really, the IRS, if there's money that's been paid due by a legitimate payor, like a company paid you with a 1099 or an employer paid you with a 10 or a W-2, or you have mortgage interest reported on a 1098, all those things get reported to the IRS. Rich, is there a way to get that information on back years on taxpayers?
Yes, we get an IRS power of attorney, and then we can run your tax report. That gives us, I believe, 10 years of all of that information: W-2, 1099, 1098, pension, social security, income. It gives all that information for the last 10 years. So like back to 2013 or so.
And that's good to know. I mean, that way, at least you have kind of the basis. And I think you were telling me that sometimes that if you can get the 1099s from the IRS, then a lot of times the client will go, oh, that's right, I did work for that company, or I did consulting for that company. And then it kind of sparks, in their mind, like, oh yeah, and then I had these expenses and all that. But it seems like if you're really far behind, really a good way to go is figure out what, I always say you need to know what the enemy knows. That might be a little cruel, but you need to know where the IRS is in collections, where are they with their notices? What about information? What do they know about you? That's that report you're talking about that we can get.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, if you just can't have no records and have no recollection, stuff like that, and the IRS does file the substitute for return, you can accept that and, work out a payment arrangement with them based on those substitute for return balance.
That's good to know too. 855-500-TRUST, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rich Mathurin of GQ Law, talking about dealing with tax situations. And this is IRS and state, right?
Yeah.
State of California.
Yes. And the state is even worse than the IRS. They are much more aggressive. They will garnish wages at a drop of a hat. I have seen where if you have your own business, they will send a levy order to your customers telling them to pay the franchise tax board instead of the taxpayer in the business. So they're very aggressive. They also create these they call them notice of proposed assessments, similar to the SFRs for the IRS. But with those, they will take like 1098 mortgage interest statements, multiply them by 6, and say that that's your income. So they're even tougher than. I had an IRS revenue officer recently. The client had both IRS and FTB problems, and he said, the FTB is a lot tougher than we are. And I said, yes, I know.
That's funny. I mean, because at least the IRS is using numbers like 1099s and 1098s, and at least they're using real numbers. In the state of California, they they have the authorization to take your 1098 and multiply it by 6 because, well, your income must be at least 6 times higher than your, those to me those are kind of fantasy returns. They're kind of magically created. And those are things to be careful of. But again, those things, Rich, those can be fixed. Just a matter of getting into it.
Yeah. Again, call your tax preparer, call us, and we can have you sit down with Craig. Like I mentioned, he can really good to work with, and he can help you get back on track.
All right, Rich, thanks for being on the air again with us today. This is Gary Quackenbush and Rich Mathurin from GQ Law here on The Word on Wealth. If you have questions or you want to get a consultation with Rich to talk about this kind of stuff, it is 855-500-TRUST, 855-500-TRUST. You can also go to our website. There's a really good book on there. It's an orange cover and it's called The Tax Bankruptcy. Not only does it talk about getting rid of taxes in a bankruptcy, but it also talks about some of the options that we've been talking about here on the air. So go to our website, gqlaw.com, and get the book called The Tax Bankruptcy for free. Share it with your friends and neighbors, and we can help you out. 855-500-TRUST. All right, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks.
Tell a friend about the Word on Wealth, featured since 1995.
As always, good
With
job.
financial solutions attorney Gary Quackenbush, an expert in estate planning, wills and trusts, and tax problem solving. Gary is past president of the California Society of Tax Consultants. Reach out to us. The Word on Wealth team of financial experts is here to answer your questions and help preserve your family's financial future.
The information you hear on The Word on Wealth is for general information purposes only. This program discusses general financial and legal topics. Seek legal advice from a competent lawyer for your individual legal needs.